So you've seen your urinalysis and you have no idea how to interpret it. I'm going to tell you how we as urologists interpret the urine dipstick. Stay tuned. Hey guys, Dr. Segal, UroCoach. So in this video, I'm going to tell you how we interpret urine dipsticks. And at the end, I'm going to give you my pearl of wisdom for something that's super important to know when you interpret any urine dipstick. So make sure you stay tuned for that. First, please like, subscribe, comment. We want to hear what you want us to talk about. All right, guys, so let's get right into it. So first of all, leukocyte esterase. If you look at this diagram, it's the arrow that's pointing towards this part of the strip here, okay? So what is leukocyte esterase? Leukocyte esterase is an enzyme that is carried in white blood cells, all right? When these white blood cells break down, the enzyme gets secreted, and that's what the urine dipstick picks up. Why do the white blood cells break down? Well, in the presence of bacteria, those white blood cells are working hard to get rid of the bacteria, and in that process, they will break down. Hear that information, the first thing you think is that if there's leukocyte esterase in my urine, that automatically means I have a urinary tract infection. That's not the case, and I'm going to tell you why. There are other entities in the urine that can cause leukocyte esterase to be positive that's not necessarily a urinary tract infection. For instance, kidney stones, inflammation or inflammatory conditions, sometimes post-UTI inflammation. I mean, you had a urinary tract infection, it got treated, and the inflammation is still there. Also, medications can do it. For instance, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, proton pump inhibitors like omeprazole, and also antibiotics can cause leukocyte esterase to be positive. In fact, one of the classic emergency room calls that we get is the ER doc gets on the phone and says, listen, I got this patient with a kidney stone and a urinary tract infection. And they'll think that there's a urinary tract infection just because there's leukocyte esterase in the urine. And that's not necessarily the case. Okay, so I want to move on to the next one, nitrite. So nitrite is not normally in the urine. If you look at this diagram, that's where you see nitrite on the urine dipstick, okay? So nitrite is formed when nitrate, which is typically in the urine, is converted into nitrite by nitrite-forming bacteria. It's important to know that all bacteria do not form nitrite. Examples of nitrite-forming bacteria are E. coli, Pseudomonas, Enterobacter, Klebsiella. These form nitrate into nitrite. So other bacteria like Haemophilus, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, they do not convert nitrate to nitrite. So you could have a urinary tract infection because of one of those bacteria that I just mentioned, and the nitrite will be negative, and that's super important to know. The nitrite test is either positive or negative. There's no grades to it, all right? Now, what's really important, and one of the reasons why I mentioned these first two to start off, is that the combination of leukocyte esterase and nitrite is super powerful for detecting a urinary tract infection. So if both of those are positive, then it's very, very likely that you have a urinary tract infection. So we'll look at those together oftentimes. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is urobilinogen. So that's listed on the diagram here. So urobilinogen should not be in the urine, and it results when there's too much bilirubin in the body and it gets broken down and it's conveyed on the urine dipstick as urobilinogen. Bilirubin, what is that? When your red blood cells break down, they form bilirubin, and your liver is responsible for metabolizing this bilirubin. If there's too much bilirubin and the liver's overwhelmed, or the liver has diseases like hepatitis, hepatocellular carcinoma, meaning liver cancer, or other liver diseases, then it can't get rid of that bilirubin as well as it should. So the urine dipstick will show urobilinogen. In fact, what's super important to know is that sometimes what we think about with liver disease, somebody that gets jaundice, right? They get yellow skin, their eyes, the whites of their eyes get yellow. You won't see that first. You will oftentimes see urobilinogen being positive before people have symptoms of jaundice or yellow eyes. Another interesting fact about urobilinogen is when there's too much of it in the urine, your urine can actually look tea-colored. And some people mistake that for potential blood in the urine, which it could be, but urobilinogen can do that as well. So what do we do in this situation where we detect urobilinogen in the urine? So we'll do a referral back to somebody's primary care doctor, and we'll oftentimes check liver function tests to make sure their liver function is normal. Okay, the next one on the urine dipstick is protein. Look at the diagram here. So when you see protein on the urine dipstick, the first thing that we think of is kidney problems, right? Kidney dysfunction. If you think about the kidney as a grand filter in the body, if there's kind of some extra holes in the kidney or the filter isn't working properly, then protein will spill into the urine, and that's what you pick up on a urine dipstick. So something that's really important to know with protein in the urine is the urine dipstick won't pick up protein values less than 150 milligrams per day. The typical threshold where the dipstick starts to pick up protein is between 300 and 500 milligrams per day. Important facts with protein in the urine and the urine dipstick: if you have gotten IV dye, like for a CT scan, within 24 hours of getting your urine dipstick study, the study can be falsely elevated for protein in the urine. Also, protein in the urine can be overestimated if you have small volume, highly concentrated urine, and it can be underestimated if you have high volume, dilute urine. What do we do when we detect protein in the urine? So oftentimes we'll do a referral to kidney doctors. They're called nephrologists. We'll check some blood work to make sure your kidney function is within normal limits. And oftentimes the nephrologist will do something called a 24-hour urine study, where they collect your urine over 24 hours and see exactly how much protein is in there. And this is my pearl of wisdom. So when you see a urine dipstick, some people will look at the urine dipstick and they'll look at it and they'll get multiple different values for the same urine specimen. And what's really key is if you look at this diagram here, you have to make sure you wait the right amount of time. Each one of the values that we are measuring on the urine dipstick requires a requisite amount of time before you can interpret it properly. If you try to interpret it too early or too late, then you may get an errant value, okay? So you see that number with the letter S next to it? That's the number of seconds you have to wait to interpret it properly, and that's super important. Anyway, I hope that's helpful to you guys. The urine dipstick test is one of the more powerful, quick tests that we do as urologists. Thank you so much for listening. We certainly appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, comment. We want to hear what you want us to talk about. Thanks.